today we're going to propagate it together, and I'm going to show you the easiest way I find to propagate this Monstera, because Monstera Standleyana can be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more temperamental when propagating. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it. We're going to get our clean clippers, and I'm just going to clean mine with an alcohol wipe, and then we're going to locate Ariel roots. Now you might be asking yourself, what the heck is an Ariel root? Well, an Ariel root is roots that grow on the actual stem of the plant. So these Ariel roots, when the Monstera is living in its natural habitat underneath the canopy of the tropical rainforest, what they do is these Ariel roots will grow on the stem, attach to the surrounding trees, and help the plant grow upwards so it can gain more sunlight and be able to photosynthesize better to produce energy for the plant to grow. So we want to locate these Ariel roots. So they're not roots that actually grow at the bottom of the plant in the soil or the medium. It's actually roots that grow on the stem of the plant. The easiest way to locate the Ariel root is to have a look along the stem, and you'll notice these brown lumps or bumps on the stem. They can be a little bit larger, a little bit smaller, but these are Ariel roots. And if you find Ariel roots, hooray! You should celebrate, because this is really going to help to propagate this plant. Once you've found the Ariel root, what you want to do is actually take cuttings. Now you want to cut about 1 inch or about 1.5 centimeters below the Ariel root. You want to make sure that the Ariel root has enough nodes. Now you might also be asking yourself, what the heck is a node? Well, nodes are actually where new roots can grow out and also new leaves can grow out of it. And the easiest way to locate a node is basically, if you see where the leaves are growing out, that's where the node is located. And with a cutting, you don't want the cutting to be too long or too short. If it's too short, there might not be enough Ariel roots or nodes on the cutting for the actual new plant to survive. And it's too long, what's going to happen is that the new plant is going to prioritize in keeping and maintaining the leaves rather than growing new roots. And we want new roots to grow in the first stages of propagating this plant. So with the cutting, I suggest you have Ariel roots on the cutting, and also a minimum of 2 nodes, and even better 3 nodes, because just in case one node dies, you still got 2 spare for new leaves to grow from it. And with once you get the cutting there, you also want to make sure that the cutting that you have, the leaves are mature leaves. You don't want immature leaves, because a mature leaf already has grown. It's already being able to photosynthesize, capture the sunlight and photosynthesize and produce energy. Where if you have a very young, immature leaf, the leaf is actually still growing, it's still maturing, so it doesn't have as much capacity to capture the sunlight compared to a mature leaf. So a cutting that has a lot of immature leaves, it's more likely that the cutting is going to die. You also want to make sure that with the leaves, you want to pull out the bottom parts of the leaves on the bottom part of this stem, because you're going to pop that end of the stem into the growing medium. So you don't want the leaves actually underneath the growing medium, because that's more likely to rot. So you want to pull down the last few leaves and leave about 3 leaves on the stem. If not 2 is even better. The problem with having just 1 leaf on the cutting is that if that leaf dies, that's it, you don't have a spare. When you have 2 is good, because if 1 dies, you have 1 as a spare, and 3 is maximum. More than 3 leaves on the cutting, it means that it's going to be a lot slower with the growth of the actual cutting, because the plant is going to prioritize in maintaining those leaves rather than producing new roots. The growing reading I'm using is sphagnum moss. I happen to like using sphagnum moss, and I've had a lot of success in growing this plant in sphagnum moss. I've tried previously water, and I found with water what happens is that the ends of the root the ends of the cutting tended to rot. I tried soil propagation, direct soil propagation, and that just completely didn't work out for me. And the same thing, just the ends of the cutting rotted. I haven't ever tried leca first. I've been told that works well also, but for myself, I found that sphagnum moss is the best medium to propagate this plant. Once you've got the cutting, you want to dip it into some rooting hormone. And what rooting hormone does, it helps to actually prevent from the end of the cutting from rotting, and also helps to promote the new cutting to grow roots faster. So I'm just going to moisten up my sphagnum moss. I'm going to fill up a container of sphagnum moss there. You don't need much. This is a very small pot, and it doesn't need much sphagnum moss because it's only a cutting. It doesn't actually have any roots in it yet. So if you put in a pot that's too big, what's going to happen is that the sphagnum moss is going to stay wet for too long, and it's more likely that the cutting's going to rot. So you just want a small pot to start off with, and then place the sphagnum moss in the pot and then pop the cutting in it, making sure that at least one of the nodes is down at the bottom, or down underneath the sphagnum moss, and you want to actually pat it down to make sure that the cutting is firmly secured. So I've got two cuttings here, one that is very good because it has mature leaves and also 2 or 3 nodes on it, and one that doesn't have mature leaves, it has very young leaves. But I'm going to show you what happens with the both of them. So I'm going to pop it into this pot here, and then I'm going to place it in the area where this plant receives a lot of bright indirect sunlight. Now, you don't want to put the new Monstera Standleyana propagation into direct sunlight, especially afternoon sunlight, because it's more likely that the leaves are going to burn. If you need to put it in an area where it's receiving direct sunlight, it can also withstand morning sunlight. And I don't need to water it yet because I pre-moistened the sphagnum moss, so it's already moist and it's enough for it. And these are the cuttings, what they look like after 3 months time, and you can see the one cutting that's doing extremely well, it's actually growing new leaves, so I can tell that's doing really well, and I don't even need to pull on the stem to be able to tell that the roots have actually grown. And the other one that is dying off, I might as well pull it out because it's dying, it's not going to survive, and I don't want to risk my other cutting from dying off, because when a cutting's dying off, it can attract things like pests and disease, so it can be quite detrimental to your other cuttings if you leave it in there. So best to just remove it and get rid of it. And that's why when propagating plants, not just Monstera Standleyana or any sort of plant, try and get as many cuttings as you can, because the more cuttings you have, the more chances that the cuttings survive. Because it's not 100% guarantee on either way, whatever method you use to propagating a plant, that the cutting is going to survive. So the more cuttings you have, the better it is. Now, with this cutting here that's doing really well, it's time to actually transfer it into soil. And I know that it's time to transfer because the plant is now prioritizing in growing new leaves. It has enough root system to sustain it. It's actually focusing on growing new leaves, so it's time to transfer it into soil. If you didn't want to transfer it into soil, you can actually leave it in that sphagnum moss to grow, and that's actually how I grow my mother plant, my Monstera Standleyana mother plant, which I got the cutting from. It's actually only growing in sphagnum moss, but I'm going to give this new plant away, so I'm going to transfer it into soil. And the soil mixture I use is a very well draining light soil that consists of equal parts of potting mix, orchid bark, perlite and horticultural charcoal. And the pot I'm using is just a plastic nursery pot that has a lot of holes in it. It's important to have a pot that has a lot of holes. You don't want a big pot because this is just a new plant. It does have a small root system. It doesn't need a big pot. So this one here is only a small 10 centimeter pot. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get rid of all the sphagnum moss. Now you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to get rid of every single speck of sphagnum moss, just get rid of as many as you can there. And also I can tell that it's time for this plant to be transferred into the actual soil because the roots are at least 5 centimeters long, so that's enough for the plant to survive in the new soil. If the root system is more than 5 centimeters, it may not survive the stress in transferring the plant from sphagnum moss into soil. So make sure that the roots are at least 5 centimeters long, which is approximately about 2 inches long. So once that's done, once I've got my pot ready, I'm just going to dig a hole, pop the new cutting in the soil and backfill it so that the plant is actually nice and secure in the soil. Now I don't actually like the look of perlite when sometimes it rises up to the top of the soil. So what I do is I put a very thin layer of just normal potting mix on top just to reduce the effects of the perlite appearing in the soil. I just think it's more aesthetically beautiful, but you can skip that step, you don't have to do it. Also on Monstera Standleyana, they do like to climb, so I'm going to give it a trellis. I'm just going to give it a plastic trellis just to help it climb upwards. That way the plant actually will grow bigger leaves, and also that helps because it's going to grow bigger leaves because it allows it to capture more sunlight, and that's how it grows in the tropical rainforest. It likes to climb upwards. So I'm going to give it a trellis. I'm going to give it the same care. I'm going to put it back in the same area where it's receiving a lot of bright indirect sunlight, or if you don't have indirect sunlight, put it in the area where it's receiving direct morning sunlight. That works well also. I'm just going to make sure that the soil is moist, not soggy, but moist, and just re-water it when the soil dries up again. And now it's all ready to be given away, and that's how easy it is to actually propagate a Monstera Standleyana. And so go ahead, try it. If you have more techniques of your own on how you propagate your Monstera Standleyana, I'd love to read about it in the comment section down below. If you want to know how to take care of a Monstera Deliciosa, then watch this video here. I'll see you next video.